All right, here we go. We are another episode. We are winding down on 2020 or winding down on 2021. We're ready to hit 2020, but we're not going out without some amazing guests here today. And actually, we have another one next week. Actually, we're going to do it right before the break. So I'm thrilled to have my guest today. We've been trying to connect in person for over a year, and I'm very thrilled to have him join me today. He is all over the place, doing some amazing things, both within his school and writing, producing podcasts. I can't wait to hear him and have him share what he's doing. You see down the bottom, I want to thank our sponsors, Swivel and Bulb. Without them, all these great things that you see wouldn't be happening. They're a huge support. It's a big part of being stronger together to have our supports with us. And with that, I want to welcome someone in who I do want to be stronger together with in person. We were just talking about that today, having a time to connect. And I want to welcome in Charles Williams. And hey, man, nice to see you.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me. And we definitely need to get together in person and have, a beer or something and
Absolutely,
and strengthen that connection together.
Yeah, let's make it happen for sure. And you have a lot of them going on. So for those viewers out there who don't really know you enough yet, but they will, tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you?
Yeah, so I'm a Scorpio. I enjoy long walks. No, I'm joking.
I like that. No, that's good to know. That's cool. That's important information.
Yes. No, I am. My name is Charles Williams, as Matt has already mentioned. I am a K-8 principal in Chicago. This is my 16th year in education, wow. And I've realized now that this marks like that tipping point. It's okay. 8 years of administration, 8 years in the classroom. So this is like my halfway point, right? So,
all right.
Very excited for that. But in the last 2 years, a lot has happened. So I've launched a podcast, the Counter Narrative podcast. I've co-hosted a web series called Inside the Principal's Office. I've launched a consulting firm, CW Consulting, through which I present at conferences all over the place and do a lot of different things. And so it's weird to say that it's only been about 2 years. It's like, wow. That's a lot has happened. And through Inside the Principal's Office, we wrote a book. So a lot has happened.
I see it behind you. Can we get a better view of it?
Yeah.
Oh, now you have one right in front of you.
Yeah, of course. You got to, right? The shameless plugs.
Yeah. No, I see him. I see it up there. So what is it? I mean, I know you're in there. You just said you were principal for 8 years. So you're inside the principal's office. What's that? Tell me a little about the book.
Yeah, so it's me, my co-host Michael McWilliams, who's a career principal down in Texas, Denton. I think Mike's been a principal for like 20 years, and then Rob Thornell, also from Texas. Okay. So Rob came to us and he said, "Look, I have an idea for a book. I want to write this thing, and I'd love to write it with you all." And we're like, "Okay, let's do this." And to be honest, we pumped this book out in less than maybe 6 months. And the reality, one, right, when 3 people are writing it, it makes it a lot easier.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
And 2, it's life experiences. That's all this is. So we've broken down the book into 40 different weeks. It's designed to be reflections. So we share an experience that we had. And then at the end of that chapter, if you will, there's some reflection questions around, servant leadership, around telling your own story, about celebrating the successes in your school. And so it's designed really to be read on a week-by-week basis. Or you could read the whole thing if you want. You could bounce around. It's in no particular order. But it's just, like I said, our leadership experiences that we wanted to share with other leaders out there. So, we sat down and we pumped it out. And now there's conversations for a version 2 because we're like, wait, we can only pick 40 stories. So, we obviously, we have more, especially them, they have way more stories than I do. But yeah, now we're talking about a version 2.
Awesome. What's one that you contributed that do you think that the viewers would be like, okay, this is critical for either a current leader or aspiring leader, one of the, pieces that you put in there that's like, this is something that's critical.
Yeah. So I don't remember the name of the chapter, but essentially it was a story about, I was walking down the hallway. I did my rounds in the building, every morning. And my cafeteria staff always had fresh coffee and something for me to eat every morning, right? Because you got to take
Important
care of
stuff
your
right there.
exactly. So one morning I was just in a rush, right? I had to get back to a meeting after my morning round. So I'm walking down the hallway, munching on whatever it was that they gave me. And a student and a teacher in the hallway. And the student happened to say, Mr. Williams, no eating in the hallway. It's one of our rules. And before I could do or say anything, the teacher reprimanded him. You don't speak to your principal that way, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, 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 no. He's right. It's not like a student rule. This is a school-wide rule. And as the
Yeah.
principal, I should be following that rule too. Because if I don't, like, what example am I setting? I said, thank you for the reminder, buddy. I'll keep that in mind. And he looked at me like, wait, like I'm not in trouble? Like, no. And,
Right.
and and so it's just one of those things, right? That we as leaders have to serve by example. And it was in that moment, it was just a reminder. So that's all that was.
Yeah, and it's impactful as you start to build that learning community that you all follow the same rules, you all walk in the same path.
Exactly.
So I'm going to ask you a different question about the book. So you said
Sure.
you collaborated, and I'm guessing you didn't write all 40 stories. What was the
No.
story you read and was like, wow, this hits home for me?
Yeah. So there's one in here that I want to say Rob wrote. And he talked about being like a baker. And it's a concept that I've heard before. But I really enjoy this idea that you're trying to get your students to be bakers, right? So if you're a cook, right? I
Hmm.
just finished making dinner right before we popped down.
Nice.
So you could have a recipe and you could follow that recipe step by step by step, and that's fine. And you could be a decent cook, but the really, really good cooks, the chefs, they know how to take a recipe and make it their own, right? You modify, you add, you do little things, and that's what we want students to do. We don't want them just to say, you gave me information, I'm processing it, I'm regurgitating it, and just kind of going through those steps. We want them to take the learning in, and we want them to make it their own and come up with something new and creative and different, right? I
Hmm.
mean, that's why I don't know, but I'm a foodie. Whenever I travel with my wife and my family, like,
Yeah.
one, we have a rule: we don't go anywhere that we have back home, and we don't hit any chains. Like, I want to go into that spot that is known in this neighborhood, that this chef is throwing down and doing some wild and creative things, because it's going to be different, right? If I wanted a turkey club, I would have stayed at home, right?
Right.
Like, I
Right.
don't want the same thing. I want something different. And that was a chapter that stood out to me, because that's the same thing we want for our students. We don't want you just,
Absolutely.
right, just regurgitating the same old, same old. We want something different. We want you to get creative. And as leaders, we want the same with our teachers, right? We want you to step outside of the box, get creative, get innovative, and do something amazing, right? That's going to impress me and the students and yield some great results.
No, absolutely. And that's the Twitter handle at Inside Principal. Check it out. And I'm guessing the link is on there to purchase the book and learn all about your co-authors as well.
Absolutely.
That's just fascinating. So I'm going to go back to the foodie for a minute.
Yeah.
So if I were to come to Chicago and you said, I'm going to take you to these two places. I
Hmm.
didn't leave it to one because you always struggle with one, but two places that you would be like, you have to taste the food here.
Yeah. So I guess my first question for you is there something in particular that you like?
Any once you meet me in person, you'll be like, okay, this dude can eat.
He eats everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So here, I'll say this, right? I know the other day, Debbie and I, we were all having this like conversation about Chicago pizza versus New York pizza. And so there's a pizza here in Chicago. Yeah, there's the deep dish, but you could
Right.
almost get deep dish anywhere. But there's the grinder company, and
Okay.
they do almost like a pizza pot pie. It's literally like upside down, something completely different.
Wow.
And if you think a deep dish is filling, like, you got to try theirs. Like, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
One piece and you're done.
Yeah, like one piece, and they're not very big, but they're, oh man, there's so much going on there.
Nice.
So I would say that, and if I had to choose another place, there's a place. It's not really in Chicago, but it's called Calumet Fisheries. So if you're like a local, like,
Okay.
so Calumet Fisheries is literally on the river, and they have fresh fish, shrimp, all sorts of things that they smoke and fry daily. So, like, their smoked salmon. I mean, it, like, when you pull up, you could smell it smoking.
Okay.
They're fresh,
Nice.
they're shrimp, jumbo fried shrimp. So that is not like a bougie thing downtown. That's where
No.
you cash only, tons of food. You sit in
Nice.
your car next to the river and you just chow down.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I want to dive into something else. Well, it's the first time I really heard you speak and kind of get to know who you were before we even met was listening to the Counter Narrative podcast, and it was actually something I dove into, learned a lot when I was doing a lot of the equity work with MASCD, and then wrote about it in Power Connection, because it's something that for me was authentic, it was real, and it was what leaders should be speaking about. So I'd love for you to tell a little bit about how you started it. What is the Counter Narrative podcast for those who haven't listened to it, and why it's so important to you?
So, the counter narrative stemmed from a disgruntled space, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, this is year
Makes sense.
16 in
Yeah.
education. And as an administrator, even as a teacher, I got really tired of sitting in meeting after meeting after meeting where they blamed our students for all their shortcomings, right? It
Right.
was always these negative conversations, and it was kind of well, what do you expect, right? They're coming from poverty, they're violence, and all, like, it's the same stories over and over. But I knew, I was like, but my students are doing well, right? And what you're saying, that picture that you're painting, doesn't apply to all of these students. Like, there's so much more to tell. And so a few years ago, I read a piece called "The Counter Narrative" by Dr. Tyrone Howard out of UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was reading, I said, he's onto something. There's elements as to why students are successful. And I wanted to take it a step further. I just thought, what if we started painting these students in a different light? What if we started talking about them differently? And my hope was, if we started talking about them differently, we would think about them differently. If we started talking about them differently, they would think about themselves differently. And they wouldn't have a deficit mindset, right? For educators looking at these students, or
So
for these
true.
students looking at themselves, it would no longer be a deficit mindset. And so that's what I started doing. I said, let's tell those other stories that nobody talks about, right? And so the podcast is about a year and a half old. Just hit about 4,000 downloads, which I celebrate. I know some people get
That's
that, like,
wonderful. That's amazing.
like in an episode. I'm just excited, right? Just to
Right.
sharing these stories. And Matt, something that I didn't expect is that I've learned a lot, because, to be honest, I came at it from an angle of urban education. That's where I've spent all of my time.
Okay.
But I connected with people like Casey Jakubowski, right, who talked
Mm-hmm.
about rural poverty, right? Something that I'd never experienced. But he opened my eyes to that. I connected with, like, Kate, who talked a lot about, body image and things like that, and that's really where I was connected with Christine, right? And we started talking about mental health. And so it was
Right.
all of these other areas, right, that also stigmatize our students. And it was like, well, wait a second, there's a lot more to this. But it's still that same idea that, let's tell those stories of success for all of these different groups of students. So that way, again, we look and think about them differently, and they look and think about themselves differently. And that's my goal. So, I mean, it's been an incredible journey, and I don't have any plans to stop.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Is there so 4,000 downloads? That's amazing. What is something that really resonated with you over the time? I know you just spoke about a few things, but you as a leader, not about other people on your show, not about, but you, Charles Williams, how has it impacted you?
You know, I think it allows me a space, one, to reflect and to share my own thoughts. And I think that as I do this, right, and I'm sure, like, because you talk about, like, within the power of connections, it's this idea that we don't operate in silos. And so I used to sit there and I had these ideas, and it was kind of like, am I in the right path? Am I thinking, like, is anybody else thinking this way? And as I'm connecting with educators more and more and more, and just in general, from across the country, around the world, like, no, there's other people who are saying things need to change, right? We need people to stand up and to do this work. And I think what it has done is it's emboldened me, right? In the beginning, I had these radical ideas, but I was really nervous and hesitant to share them, because it's like, what if I just have this crazy idea and nobody
Right.
agrees? Like, but lately it's like, no, like, what I'm saying, is echoed by a lot of other people, just who may not be saying it. So it has really emboldened me, not to just amplify my own voice, but I think of the voices of my colleagues and peers who don't do the work in this way. And so that has been extremely powerful. And my wife tells me, be careful, like, you're getting a little cocky. I'm like, I'm it's not so much being cocky, but I am comfortable, in who I am and where I stand. And, you know, if I'm talking to somebody about a potential job or anything else, like I know who I am. And if that's not okay with you, that's fine. Like I'm not going to beg you. I'm not going to chase. I know who I am and I'm comfortable in that. And by now, like you should know who I am. Like if you are looking for me, I've put enough out there. There's no secret as to what I believe and where I stand. And you know, I think that's it. Like I'm just very comfortable with the educator that I am now.
No, and I think that's so important. And it was one of the things when I was writing Power Connections that I really took from the people that I spoke to and interviewed and talked to is that there's a difference between confident and cocky. And owning who you are. I mean, the first line in the book is "Be unapologetically you," and it's essentially
Mhm.
driving X Factor Publishing. It doesn't mean that we're better, or it doesn't mean we're the cocky, or we think we're the best, but this is who we are.
Mhm.
And I think for you to listen to your voice is consistent, not just the tone of your voice. You have an amazing voice, by the way,
Thank you.
but the messaging is consistent and it's authentic. And I think that's where that comes in. And I think that's amazing. And so, what do you have going on next? I think you're writing. It sounds like a version 2 of this book. It sounds. I know you're doing some work with Codebreaker. If you haven't, let me just pause in real quick. If you don't follow Charles, make sure you do it. His Twitter handles below. I could throw links all over the place, but I've just been putting a couple of the Twitter pieces up there because everything is linked to there. So, Charles, what do you got going on? What's next?
Yeah. So, well, I have a conference set up in Dallas. So going to speak to, and we'll see if that actually, not Dallas, in Austin,
Hmm.
in February. So if COVID allows, right? So that's exciting. You know, going to present this book to a group of superintendents. And so, you know, the hope is that spurns a series of workshops working with leaders down in Texas and maybe beyond. So very excited about that opportunity. You know, in continuing to do this work, Inside the Principal's Office had our first conference last summer down in Dallas. We're planning our second one, and we're looking to make it bigger and better again this summer down in Dallas again. Again,
Awesome.
COVID willing.
Of course, of
Um,
course.
and you know, there is something in the works. Literally, like just it's like a baby, which I know I've brought you in already.
Yeah, it's exciting
But
stuff.
yeah, trying to get, you know, something around PLCs, right? And so I won't put too much out there until we flush it out.
Yeah.
But looking forward to a potential this project because I think, you know, Matt, what I look for are needs, right? Like we see this need within education, and we're like, how can we help fulfill that need? And no offense to some of, you know, the organizations and groups out there, but like I don't want to be standoffish or clicky in any sort of way.
No.
Like if you are an educator and you're looking, like come join us, come and hang out. You can leave and then come back. Like that is what I'm about. It's not, I don't want this to be exclusive in any sort of way. And so I'm really looking forward to this new project and you know, just bringing more people into the fold.
Yeah, well, that's what this is all about, and this is what I have found has been a motivator for me from all the way back to when I was in college to now. That the more we bring people together, the more we lift people up, then we're all growing. So I'm going to end on that. Though I've been asking because throughout this process of writing about Stronger Together and building collaborative communities, if I were to say to you, what does Stronger Together mean? How would you answer that?
I would say this. uh, you know,
I'm going to
it's
push it more. You know that.
yeah, you know, it's understand, like I said right earlier, it's knowing who you are and how you show up in spaces, and that it's okay that you don't have all the answers. It's okay not to be an expert in everything. And so when we come together, much like the project that we're working on, it's finding people who are really good at something and saying, okay, you take that and you help me learn and grow and be better in that area, but that's your specialty, right? We talk like about zones of genius, right? If we all operate out of our zones of genius and we tackle a project or whatever it is together like that, that thing's going to be amazing because we're all operating out of a place that we're super strong, but we're also being fulfilled, right? So we're excited, we're energized, we're geared up and ready to do that work. And so for me, that's what Stronger Together is. It's exactly what we've been doing, bringing together a diverse group of educators who are all passionate about their own specific areas and leaning on one another as we go through that. I think, to be honest, And then I know I've said this before, but this is one of the benefits of this pandemic. Like I kind of played around a little here and there in this Twitter edu space, and I don't think had it been for this, I would have been doing what I'm doing now. And so, I have made an immense number of connections, some more than others, but it has made me all the better. And I wouldn't ask for anything else.
Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on in such a short time. I was a little nervous with the time zones, and we fit it in. If you don't follow Charles, make sure to do that. He has two of the Twitter handles there, and make sure to check out the podcast. Make sure to check out the book. Put that up one more time, and just check out all the great things he is doing. So, Charles, I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate all that you're doing, and I hope we do have that chance to connect in real time. And if you need someone down in Awesome, happy to help. And I know we're going to continue to make some collaborations together. So thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. I'm going to go back, starting to watch the Matrix series, so I can watch the new one and understand maybe what's going
Maybe.
on. But you take care.
Awesome. And thank you all for viewing, tuning in, adding your comments. And remember, we stay stronger together when we put we over me. Have a good night, everybody.